Welcome to WP Means Business Bite-Sized Webinars. We're going to cover categories versus tags, a little bit of a head-to-head. What are they and what do they do? Well, first of all, what they are is they're a way of sorting out and categorizing your posts. It only applies to posts and not to pages. So it's mostly for humans. So don't get caught up in the fact that a lot of people may well talk about this from a search engine point of view, although we'll cover that in a little bit of detail later on. But think about it from a human's point of view of finding things in your blog or in your news part of your WordPress website. So first of all, let's show you it in action on a website or two. There we go. Right. So this is a typical kind of blog page, a list of blog entries quite nicely laid out. And you can see on here, it's been set up to have the categories and the tags appearing on the listing. If we look at an individual item, you'll see again it's got categories and tags. How it actually appears on your website depends on your theme, and it's quite possible that it may have been suppressed or turned off. Let's have another look at another example, and then we'll come back to that first one because it's quite a nice one. So here's a blog post. In this case, that's the category. You can tell by the little bit up here. Let me highlight it. There we go. So that was the category. If I scroll right the way down, it's a nice long post. There we go. There's some tags. Now, I could actually tell that they were what they were by hovering over one of them. So I'm hovering over a WordPress competition, and you can see it has a link that goes to wp-lift/tag/ whatever the tag name is, and the same if we go back up to the category. So let's have a look at what you actually get if you click on a category page. So this should be all the blog entries that are under that category, not surprisingly. And you can also do the same trick if we look at the page. Somebody could go into the page, which is just going to fail to load. There we go. Let's go further down. And they can pick one of the categories. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just show you how you get those into your posts, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion about which you pick, when you pick a category, how many categories you use, and how many tags you use. So when you're putting in posts, so it definitely only works with posts. Obviously, you have the usual stuff. Over here on the right-hand side, you've got categories and you've got tags. So categories, you can add your own ones by just clicking on the Add New button. And you can select which ones you want it to belong to by putting in ticks. If you add a new one, it will appear and it will tick it. Categories have a hierarchy, so you can create a new category underneath another category. So you can have underneath, I can't spell, and you can add that one. So you can see it's nested underneath it. That's quite useful, and every post really should be under at least one category. We'll come back to that. Tags are a little bit different. They're not hierarchical. You can basically, all you do is you type them in. So let's put tag 1, put a comma between things. Let's have a look. Tag 2, tag 3, and you can add. So it's added 3 individual tags, and you can then delete them if you need to by clicking on the little, whatever that is, cross sign. You can also look at the most used ones, and that'll create what's called a tag cloud, which will have different sizes for these things to put in proportion to the amount of times they've been used. You can also put those as widgets on your website. Some people like to do that to show what kind of topics you're talking about. So that's how you get things in. Now, which should you pick? Here's a reasonably good explanation of categories and tags. Categories really should be quite broadly focused on broad topics, and they really should be describing things that are kind of very similar to each other. So in this case, they're talking about food, So they've picked out categories of desserts, breakfast, entrees, etc. The tags are a little bit more narrow and really describe in more detail your content and allow people to find out things that are a little bit of a nuance, still a bit subtle about your content. So in this case, the person has got an example blog down here of Dad's chocolate chip cookies. You can see they've categorized it as desserts and given it 2 tags of chocolate and cookies, which means that somebody can go in there and find all the desserts or find all the food that contains chocolate. And you've got another example underneath with more tags on. So that would also, if you clicked on chocolate, you would see the banana chocolate chip cookies and the Dad's chocolate chip cookies. Now there's a subtlety here in that you are deciding how to put the categories together. Obviously a food blogger is interested in probably in those different types of mealtime. If you're an ingredients blogger, you'll probably have categories of chocolate, cookies, banana, and you probably have them under different hierarchies. So you'd probably have a top level of fruit. So you could put the different fruit underneath that. So that's giving you a bit of an example. Realistically, you want to have things in at least one category. By default, you get a lovely category called what's it called, uncategorized, which you need to edit and create at least something decent, because if you don't change that one, every new post that you create will be marked as uncategorized unless you tick it otherwise. So I tend to typically change that one to news. Now, so at least one category. If you can narrow it down to one category, that'd be really good. If you really feel you have to put it under 2, then do so. But it obviously just makes it, there's a chance that you might have so many categories that you start ticking categories for everything, and all the category pages that we saw before, when you look at all the things lumped in one category, all those category pages will start to look very, very similar. They'll start to have the similar kind of blog entries in. Now that does cause a kind of an issue from an SEO point of view, and it starts to look like duplicate and quite low quality content. Now there are some ways around that. If you use the SEO plugin that I recommended, Yoast SEO or Yoast WordPress SEO, you can mark the page on that as no index, which will tell the search engines that you don't want that page to appear. The other reason for using categories is that there are some plugins which will allow you to show maybe a list of popular plugins by category. So you can limit the amount of things. You may have a news category that you don't want to show in the most recent or most popular news because things could come out of date. So you would just exclude the news category. Same with tweet old posts. It's quite good for organizing those. So try and narrow it down to 5 categories or less. If you get more, it just becomes a little bit confusing. In terms of numbers of tags, again, the more you have, the more unreadable it starts to be as a big lump of tags appear at the end of your pages. Do whatever is useful for a human being. In terms of picking your categories, if you can't think of at least 5 things you could post in that category, then think again. So don't be excessive, and it will evolve. So that's a little bit of an overview of categories versus tags. It being what's called ontology, I think is the name for things when you categorize things. You will get things wrong. You will find that you didn't get it quite right the first time, but you've obviously got to start somewhere, so you then need to think about reorganizing it as it evolves over time. That's it for today. Thank you for calling.